Parshas Vayeshev, self-sacrifice for mitzvahs to sanctify God. So let us begin with chapter 37, verse 14. And this is after Yosef had had several dreams, which reinforced his father's hatred, his brother's hatred of him. You will as needed. So his father had showed him favoritism, made him a special coat, gave him special attention, studied with him, which made the brothers jealous, of course. And then he had these dreams in which he saw that he was going to be bowed to. He was the sun. The sun and the moon and the stars were bowing to him. The bundles of wheat were bowing to him. Anyway, his father was not happy with the way things were working out, and the brothers were very jealous. Anyway, the brothers had gone to shepherd the sheep, and here we read, Vayomer loy, lech no re'ei es shlem achecha v'shlem atzai. V'hashiveni davar, v'yishlecheu me'im mechevren v'yavo shechem. And he said to him, he being Yaakov, said to him being Yosef, go and see how your brothers are doing, and how the flocks are faring. Yes.
Are you able to share the screen? Because I still didn't get it in my email.
The problem with sharing the screen is that I'm on my phone, not my computer. Even though my computer's camera started working mysteriously yesterday, in honor of Hanukkah or something, but I was not able to sign in from my computer because the Zoom account didn't recognize the device. So I don't really know how to share it on my phone, but maybe somebody else on this class can share it. Ezra has started screen sharing. Thank you very much. Perfect. So, the verse continues. Vayimtzo'ehu ish, v'hine soya basoda, vayishalehu ish lemer matavakesh. When he reached Shechem, a man came upon him wandering in the fields. The man asked him, what are you looking for? Vayomer es achai anochi mavakesh. He said, I'm looking for my brothers. Hagida noli, please tell me, Ephraim roim, where are they shepherding? Vayomer ish, the man said, Nosu mizeh. They have gone from here. Kishamati oimrim, I heard them saying, Nelcha doisona. Let's go to Doisan. Vayelech Yosef achar echav. Yosef followed his brothers. Vayimtzaim beDoisan, and he found them in Doisan. This whole conversation is difficult to understand. The Torah obviously only shares relevant details with us, details from which we can learn lessons. And many parts of stories are left out, and we never hear about them, and some of them are filled in with the medrash. But things that are not significant are certainly not included. So why is it important that he went to Shechem, couldn't find them, the man found him, where are they? They traveled from here, I heard them saying, let's go to Doisan, and he went to Doisan. I mean, even if you're going to record the conversation, but do you have to say the whole conversation? They've traveled from here, I heard them saying, we're going to go to Doisan, and he went after them, and he found them in Doisan. The whole thing seems to be unnecessary. So Rashi says, Nosu mizeh, hisiu atzman min ha'achva. The man told them, and the man, by the way, according to the Medrash, is none other than the angel Gabriel. The angel told them, the angel sometimes appears in the form of a man. And the angel told him, I heard them saying, Nasu mizeh, you're asking where your brothers are. They don't feel very brotherly towards you right now. Hesiu atzmam min ha'achva, they've departed from all feeling of brotherhood. Nelcha doisoina, Rashi says, Levakesh lacha nichle doses, shiye misuscha bahem, shiye misucha bahem. Let us go to seek some legal pretext to put you to death. They've gone to find legal ways to kill you, excuses to be able to say they had the right to kill you. Basically, the angel was warning him, be careful. They're up to no good. And Yosef anyway went after them to Dosan, and he found them there. And of course, as we know, they wanted to kill him. Reuben said, no, don't kill him, throw him into the pit instead. And the eventually Yehuda convinced them to sell him. And that's how he ended up being sold as a slave to the Yishmaelites, to the Midianites, eventually to Egypt, and the story continues from there. But the question is, you're not allowed to put yourself in danger. It's forbidden. We don't own ourselves. We don't own our bodies. We certainly don't own our souls. God created them, and he gave them to us for safekeeping. We have to do the best to treat it as best as we can. We don't have the right to destroy our bodies. It's forbidden to make a tattoo on yourself by Torah law. And certainly anything else that is damaging to the body is forbidden. And certainly to put your life in danger, which God forbid could mean the end of one's life, is absolutely forbidden, because we're here in this world for a purpose. As long as we're alive in this world, we have to try to fulfill that purpose, and we have no right to end our time here before it's time. Now, there are some mitzvahs that are so important that they override one's life. I'm just going to go to my room, excuse me. All right, sorry about that, my friends. So, we continue, and we were saying that there are three mitzvahs that are of such great importance that they override even one's life. And one should rather die than transgress them. What are they? Who knows?
Adultery.
Exactly.
Idol worship.
Exactly.
And murder.
Exactly. And honoring one's parents is not one of those three. So why would Yosef put himself in a dangerous situation when the angel is basically telling him, you are going to people who are trying to find a way to kill you? Now, the truth is, I didn't read till the end of Rashi. The end of Rashi says, "Ein mikra yotze midei pshuta." This is not the simple meaning of the text. The simple meaning of the text is that it was a man who asked him directions, he gave him directions. Okay, but Rashi does quote the other interpretation, and obviously it's a valid one, and it has meaning to it. So why would Yosef put his life in danger to fulfill the mitzvah of respecting his parents? His father is the one who sent them on this mission. So, Isaac Yaroslavich is here. I see you. Welcome back. We've missed you for a few weeks.
Thank you, Rebbe. Yeah, I missed you too. I was on the phone with Rabbi Smith, and I suddenly said, I happen to be able to catch Rabbi Citron's class, so I'm going to run over. I'm in the reception area at Baskin Palmer. I'm having something with my glaucoma. It's crazy. It's all good. It's
Okay.
all good.
Lema.
Baruch Hashem. And you look very, very well, really.
Well, thank you. My son got engaged. You might remember him, Shragi, from many years ago.
Mazel tov. Yep, Mazel tov.
Thank
Mazel
you.
tov.
Thank you.
Thank you. You remind me how old I am.
How old? Oh, yeah, exactly.
Mazel tov.
Thank
Good.
you. Thank you. So, the Ramban, who is one of the other classic commentators, says that we have to interpret the Medrash that Rashi quotes slightly differently. It doesn't mean that the angel literally said to Yosef these words. They have departed from brotherhood and they've gone to make pretexts to kill you. No. The angel said these words. They have traveled from here because I've heard them say, let's go to Dosan. But the angel was trying to give Yosef a clue. He didn't want to spell it out. He wanted Yosef to figure it out. That when he said they've traveled from here, he was referring to leaving the feeling of brotherhood. And when he said they've gone to Dosan, he was supposed to understand that he meant they've gone to make pretexts to kill you. But Yosef didn't take the hint. So that's the Ramban's interpretation. But Rashi doesn't quote that. And according to Rashi, it seems like the angel explicitly warned him. So it is possible that Yosef did put his life on the line, even to fulfill the mitzvah of honoring one's parents. And that's because there are opinions that say that even though you don't have to put your life on the line to fulfill other mitzvahs besides the three that we mentioned, but you're allowed to if you want to. It's voluntary. You can. You don't have to, but you can. So I'll tell you a story that illustrates that. So everybody's heard of the Chafetz Chaim, Rabbi Yisrael Meir Kagan. He was the author of one of the most famous books in Jewish law. It's called the Mishnah Berurah. He was also the author of the Chafetz Chaim, which is the laws of gossip, or not gossiping. And he was one of the great sages of the generation leading up to the Holocaust. And he lived in a small town called Radin in Poland. He was the head of a yeshiva there. And during World War I, they decided to evacuate and move into Russia. And they were traveling on a train, and Shabbos was approaching. And they asked the Chafetz Chaim if they should stay on the train for Shabbos or if they should get off. And the Chafetz Chaim said no, they should stay on the train because he was traveling with his family and with, a group. And Chafetz Chaim said no, we should stay on the train. Our lives are in danger, and that overrides the Shabbos. And anyway, Shabbos was approaching. And a few minutes before the sun set, they realized that the Chafetz Chaim was no longer on the train. Even though he had told everybody. Everybody, and you can unmute yourselves as necessary. even though he had told the the group he was with, that they did not have to get off the train for Shabbos, they should stay on the train. He himself was strict, and he did not want to desecrate the Shabbos, even though he felt that their lives were in danger. And he got off the train. I don't know if the train had slowed down or if it was a stop or whatever. And even though it was in the middle of nowhere, it was just a field, he got off the train. And as soon as his group realized that he had gotten off, they all got off. They actually were not so far from a nearby city, and the members of the city heard that Chafetz Chaim was outside of the city, and they went to bring him into the town before Shabbos, or maybe on Shabbos, or he was close enough. Anyway, but that's an example where the Chafetz Chaim gave them the basic ruling, which is that Shabbos does not override a situation of danger to one's life. But at the same time, he himself wanted to be strict, and he did not want to desecrate the Shabbos, even though he was putting his life in danger. So some want to suggest that this is Rashi's opinion, and that's why he says that that Yosef went to find his brothers, even though it was a dangerous situation. So the problem with that interpretation is that his father's mission was not just to go see how the brothers were doing, but also to come back and give them a report. Now, he's not going to be able to give them a report if he's dead. So he's not really fulfilling the mission at all. So he's putting his life in danger, not for really any good purpose. So therefore, the Lubavitcher Rebbe comes up with the following interpretation. Any questions before I continue? Talking for a long time.
Can I ask you why? What is your opinion? Why was it so important for him to follow his father's kind of assignment to put himself in such a dangerous situation?
This is exactly the question. This is exactly the question. So hopefully we'll come to understanding soon.
Okay, thank you.
So the concept is as follows. Even though we are not supposed to put our lives in danger for regular mitzvahs, besides the three that we mentioned, nevertheless, there is an exception. And that is if there is a mitzvah that people are being lax in, and one would like to show that this is an important mitzvah and would like to strengthen that mitzvah, and they put themselves in danger to honor that mitzvah, because they're not just doing it for that mitzvah in particular. They're doing it as an example to the community to show people how important the mitzvah is. That is an exception to the rule. I'll give you an example. There was a man who was called the Makoshesh Eitzim, the gatherer of sticks. When the Jews were in the desert, there was a man who was caught gathering sticks on Shabbos. And they caught him. Witnesses testified. They didn't know what to do with him. They brought him to Moshe. Moshe asked Hashem. And Hashem said he needs to be stoned to death. And that's what happened. The commentaries say this man was not a simple person. He was a tzaddik who felt that the Jewish people, this was just after the sin of the spies, when it was said the Jews were all going to die in the desert over 40 years. And he felt that the Jews were so down that they might become lax in mitzvahs and figure there's no point in being so careful about this. We're not going to Israel anyway. And he wanted to teach them a lesson about the importance of Shabbos in particular. And he violated the Shabbos in front of witnesses on purpose, knowing he would be killed, because he wanted to strengthen Shabbos observance. He wanted people to see how serious this matter is. So he basically gave up his life to strengthen Shabbos observance. Now, I'm not saying it was the right thing to do in general, because he did desecrate the Shabbos, besides losing his life. I'm not saying that we have the right to make that choice. But I am saying that the idea of giving one's life up for a mitzvah that is not one of the three, but to strengthen it when people are lax in that observance, that is the idea in that case. So, coming back to Yosef and his brothers, the brothers had a problem with one mitzvah in particular, and that is the mitzvah of respecting and honoring one's parents. Several examples where we see that the brothers were not honoring their parents properly. Let's see if you can figure it out.
Rabbi, what is this that you're asking us? I'm sorry.
I'm asking if you can think of examples where the brothers of Yosef were not observing the mitzvah of kibud av va'em properly.
I think they were turning each other in, if I'm not mistaken. They were talking about Yosef. They were speaking ill to Yaakov about Yosef. I think that was not showing kibud av va'em.
Okay, well, that's more like Lashon Hara, but what did they do to disrespect their parent?
Reuven moved his mother's bed.
Exactly, thank you. Reuven moved his mother's bed. Interfering in the intimate life of his parents, or his father, really. His mother had passed away already, but he moved his father's bed actually from Bilhah's tent to his mother's bed, his mother's tent. So that was pretty serious. Yep. What else? In last week's parsha, there was a bit of a dispute between Yaakov and two of the brothers, Shimon and Levi. Shimon and Levi took matters into their own hands, wiped out an entire city with which the brothers had made a covenant, and they did not bother to discuss their plan with their father. The father was part of the covenant, and this can be seen as a major breach of trust, and it's not a simple thing. And when Yaakov found out about it, he said, "Acharta moisi, you've muddied me. You've given me a bad name. Lahavisheni b'yoshev ha'oretz, you've made us look bad in front of the settlers of the land. Baknani v'aprizi, the Canaanites and the Prizi. Now they're going to come and they're going to wipe us out." And he was upset. In the end, they were okay. But the fact that they could go ahead and make such a drastic move without discussing it with their father, that was the problem. So, within this story of Yosef itself, as Moshe was mentioning, we also have some issues of respect, lack of respect. Because Yaakov had chosen Yosef to be his favorite son. He's the one who made him that coat. And instead of respecting the choice and saying, well, maybe he deserves it, maybe he is a special child, and we should give him respect, instead of being so jealous, maybe our father has a point. Instead, no, they just disagreed with their father, and they were upset at him. They were upset at Yosef. They were jealous of him, totally not respecting what he felt was a deserved respect for Yosef. So Yosef decided that he was going to teach them a lesson. He was going to teach them a lesson about the importance of respecting your parents. And he was going to go to a place of danger where he might actually die. And if he would die, he wouldn't even fulfill the mitzvah because his father would never find out about this. But in doing so, his brothers would see an example of how far you need to go to respect your parents. And here is where we have a connection, to the Hanukkah holiday. The Jewish people at the time of Hanukkah had a problem. They had a big problem. What was the problem that the Jewish people had?
They were assimilating.
I'm sorry. They couldn't practice their religious ceremonies.
So Ezra is saying they were assimilating, and Anna is saying that they couldn't practice the religious rituals.
They were being, Rabbi?
Yes.
They're being Hellenized.
Exactly. Both are true. There were plenty of them who were willingly not practicing. They were assimilating, and they were not upset that they were assimilating. And that was unfortunately the majority of the Jewish people. I hate to say it. This is what is called the unspoken story of Hanukkah. I read an article about this yesterday. It was based on a lecture, or maybe it was an article by Rabbi Soloveitchik, by J.B. Soloveitchik, Rosh Yeshiva of Yeshiva University, Yeshiva Yitzchok Elchanan. And he explains over there why it is that Hanukkah has no tractate in the Mishnah. The Mishnah has 60 tractates. And of those tractates, I think 11 of them are about holidays. There's one about Shabbos. There's one about making an Eruv on Shabbos, or before Shabbos, or whatever. There's one about Pesach. There's one about the half shekel. There's one about Rosh Hashanah. There's one about Yuma, which is Yom Kippur. There's one about Sukkah. There's one called Megillah, that's about Hanukkah. There's one about fast days. There's one about Chol HaMoed. I'm missing one, but there's none about Hanukkah. There is a mention of Hanukkah here and there in the Mishnah in passing, but there's no tractate about Hanukkah. It doesn't seem right. Purim is just one day, and it gets a tractate. And Hanukkah, which happened well before the Mishnah was written, and that's why it is mentioned in the Mishnah several times, does not get a tractate. And Rabbi Soloveitchik suggests that the miracle of Hanukkah, or I should say the true story of Hanukkah, is embarrassing. Because a majority of the Jewish people had been Hellenized. The majority of the Jewish people were on the side of the Greeks. When it says in the Va'al Anisim prayer, Masarta giborim biyad chaloshim, you gave over mighty ones in the hands of the weak ones. We understand that. When it says Rabim ba'at biyad ma'atim, many in the hands of the weak, we understand that. But what does it mean when it says Temeim biyad tahira, the impure ones in the hands of the pure ones? The laws of purity and impurity do not apply to Gentiles. The Jews have 613 mitzvahs, and one of them is about the laws of purity and impurity. You touch a dead body, become impure. You touch a dead rodent, certain rodents, you become impure. You go to the mikvah, you become pure. You get the para aduma water sprinkled on you, you become pure. Those laws do not apply to Gentiles. The Gentiles have 7 Noahide laws. The laws of purity and impurity are not part of their code. So you wouldn't say that a Gentile is impure because that whole set of laws does not apply to them. So what does it mean that you gave over the impure in the hands of the pure? And the idea is, it's very sad to say, that the Hellenists, many of them were Jews. And you gave over the impure of the Jewish people who were fighting on the side of the Greeks, and they were the majority, and they were the Gibarim, the strong ones. You gave them over in the hands of the weak and the few and the pure. In addition to that, there was also decrees against observance of the Torah. And one can say perhaps that we brought that on ourselves because we had become so lax and so distant from the observances. So those that were stubbornly clinging on to them, the Hellenists figured we have to do something about this. We have to put a stop to it. If it was the whole nation that was doing it, perhaps they wouldn't have tried. It was because a majority of them had already discarded those traditions, unfortunately, that they decided we're going to try to do away with the rest. And in a way, that became the catalyst for change. If they had not made decrees against us, if they had been nice to us, we may not have fought back. We may have been killed with kindness. When the angel was fighting with Yaakov in last week's Torah portion, it says Vaye Ovek. They were wrestling. And when Yaakov met his brother Esav, it says Vayechab Kehu. He hugged him. The word Vaye Ovek, that they wrestled, and Vayechabek, they hugged, are very similar. And the commentaries say that sometimes our enemies fight with us by fighting with us, and sometimes they fight with us by hugging us and being our friends. And the influence of friendship can be more insidious than when they fight, because when they fight, we know they're the enemy, and we fight back. But when they hug us and they try to make us part of their culture, make us forget who we are and become part of them, so that's much harder to fight because we don't see them as an enemy. We let our guard down, and we could possibly, God forbid, lose our sense of nationhood, religion, sense of who we are, and so on. And unfortunately, that was happening in the time of Hanukkah. And when these decrees came out, there was a small group of people that were shaken up by it and would not allow it to continue. And they decided that they're going to do something about And what they did was literally self-sacrifice. They put their lives on the line. What they did is much more than you do in a regular war. In a regular war, you go to war, plenty of soldiers do it. They know that they might be killed, but they also know that it's not so likely. You know what I'm saying? It's a possibility, but it's not like for sure. When the Maccabees went to war, they were so few compared to the Hellenists, the Greeks, and the Hellenized Jews that they really had no hope for survival. If you read the book of the Maccabees, it describes how the Greek armies were so vast that all you could see, for as long as you could see, there was just a sea of glittering armor with elephants and chariots and all kinds of armaments that they had. And the Maccabees were just a small group. And they really had no hope. But they went to fight anyway, because they were willing to fight for their Jewishness. Because not just for themselves, maybe they won't survive it. They wanted to be an example for everybody else to show that being Jewish is not a nice hobby. It's not just something we do on the side. It's really the core of our being. And if we're not going to have it, then why do we have to be here? That's really what they were saying by going to battle in a way that was almost sure death. It actually reminds me of what some of the soldiers and civilians did on October 7th. There were groups of soldiers who went into Hamas-controlled kibbutzim and moshavim, knowing they were vastly outnumbered, going in there to try to clean out the terrorists and save the survivors, whoever they could. And many of them died because they were so vastly outnumbered. But going into that, in that situation, that was an act of tremendous mesirat nefesh, self-sacrifice. And that's what was going on in the time of the Maccabees. They were really going above and beyond. Now, the truth is that a person is obligated to give up their lives for certain mitzvahs. But over here, the Maccabees were not being killed. They were going into a situation where they would be killed. Normally, when we say a person has to give up their life, what it means is if the Gentile says, the persecuting person says, either bow or, God forbid, I'm going to kill, or either kill somebody else or I'm going to kill you, they say to the person. So the person is not killing themselves. They are being killed. They're being acted upon. But here they weren't just acted upon. They put themselves in harm's way. They did an action of self-sacrifice. That's not clear that they were obligated to do so. That's going beyond the letter of the law, really, because they wanted to change the trajectory of Jewish history. They wanted to save the Jewish nation. If not for what they did, who knows if we would be here today? We could have become an extinct population. Like you have the Incas, the Mayas, the, ancient populations that have simply ceased to exist. You read about them, you go to museums and you see their inscriptions, and that's nice. And that's it. The Jewish people have survived, of course, because of God's great kindness and his different interventions and protections and saving us in so many different situations, but also because of people like the Maccabees who really wanted to emphasize and show to the rest of the Jewish people, this is who we are. Don't give up who you are. my brother's son, my nephew, is a Chabad Shaliach on a campus in Portland, Oregon, somewhere. And there's so much going on campus. There's so many clubs that the kids belong to for all kinds of social justice things and whatever. Some of them are antithetical to the Torah's teachings. Some of them are just neither here nor there. And my brother said to his son, my nephew, you're never going to be able to compete with all of these, different organizations. What you have to do is try to move up Jewish identity, Jewishness. You have to move it up on the ladder of priority. Everybody has certain things that are most important in their lives. So for some people, it's to be a Democrat or Republican, or to be, there's some people who have literally devoted their lives to be anti-vaxxers. And listen, I'm not a big vaccine proponent, but, that's not what life is about. There's some people who devote their lives for climate change, for the animals. I have a friend whose daughter took a year off her life to go protest around the world the treatment that chickens experience. Chickens have a very hard life. No joke. I'm so glad I'm not a chicken. And listen, she had good intentions, but is that really what life is about? So the point is, what my brother told my nephew, is try to bring up the Jewish identity, bring it up a notch, make it more essential, make it more core. Okay, you can still protest other things. You can still believe in other things. You can still be part of other groups. But being Jewish shouldn't just be a group that you belong to in a club that you attend and listen to classes about. You should make that your core identity as much as possible. You can't operate in people's brains and change them that way. It's a slow process, but that's the objective, to try to make people realize that being Jewish is really the core of our existence. And the anti-Semites recognize that. When they hate a person because they're Jewish, why do they identify Jewishness as a feature that's so important that the person should be hated for it? I mean, that person has so many components of themselves, and that person themselves might consider being Jewish as a very low important part of their identity. But the anti-Semites don't. They consider it the core of who you are, and that's really the truth. They do have it right. Some people might not realize that. They might think that it's secondary and it comes after your nationality and your beliefs, your other things. But the anti-Semites, I don't want to give them too much credit, but in that sense, they're right. They see that a Jewish person's identity is really wrapped up in being Jewish. So that's what the Maccabees were trying to change. And they felt that that was worth self-sacrifice. And they succeeded. They did succeed. They brought the Jewish nation back to have a positive relationship with God. And for this, we have to thank them to this day. This is why we celebrate Hanukkah. I saw a nice vort. You know what a vort means? Who speaks Yiddish? A vort is a word. It's an expression for like a teaching. I saw a nice teaching, I think it was from the Chiddushei Harim, the first Gera Rebbe. And he says, the miracle of Hanukkah, besides the victory of the battle was about a menorah that lasted for 8 days. But really, when you think about it, there were so many miracles in the time of the Holy Temple that you wonder, why do we have to make such a big deal about this miracle? There were daily miracles. When the smoke went up from the sacrifices, it went up in a straight pillar, like a pillar. Even on a windy day, the wind didn't disperse the smoke. When the Jewish people had to bow on Yom Kippur, even though it was jam-packed in the temple courtyard, when it came time to bow, they all had room. The lechem hapanim, the special showbread that was like a three-sided bread, would stay on the table in the Beis Hamikdash for 8 days. It was baked on Friday. It was put on the golden table on Shabbos. It stayed there till the next Shabbos, 8 days later, 9 days after it was baked. And when they would give it out to the Kohanim, it was hot and fresh, steaming hot. So that was a weekly miracle, but we don't really have commemorations of these miracles. So what was so special about this miracle that we commemorate? So the first Ger Rebbe says, this lighting of the menorah was a lighting for the Jewish people as a whole. It wasn't the Maccabees lighting for themselves. They were lighting for the Jewish people. All of the service in the Beis Hamikdash was done for the community as a whole. The fact that God did a miracle for the people at that time, even though previously so many had been Hellenized, means that God considered the community to be righteous. God considered that the Maccabees' work was successful and that the spark of Judaism was lit in the Jewish people as a whole, not just by a minority of people, but by the community as a whole. And that's why this miracle is so special, because it represents not just a physical victory and not just a private miracle, but a public miracle and a communal miracle, which really shows that God had accepted that the Jewish people had come back to him. Okay, that's my drasha, that's my speech. Any questions? I'm going to move back to the other room as we talk. Questions, comments? No, David, you always have something to say. What's going on?
I'm sure I will express the opinion of everybody in your class. You open such interesting details in everything that you explain that it encourage people to start studying more and more all of the subjects that you described. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's really interesting.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. Isaac, how about you? Appointment successful, that's it?
How about me? Well, Baruch Hashem, I'm on my way now to Clermont.
Oh, okay. Very good.
I'll tell you, maybe I'll just pass on the words, catch a quickie. No. Yep, it's Hanukkah again.
It is.
What's funny is watching all the Nishtazoi yet.
Yep.
Celebrating Hanukkah, but with the as much lack of spirit as they can, without realizing that what they are celebrating is against everything that they basically do, which is good, Baruch Hashem.
No, the Jewish people are waking up this year more than any
other
year.
Absolutely, 100%.
This war has really woken up the Jewish people across the spectrum and made us realize that just like the whole world considers us Jewish to our core, we should start doing the same.
Yeah.
So
I say
many
for
people have changed
years, I mean, since I'm a teenager, I remember starting to get up for davening and then putting on the tefillin, literally looking at it as getting armored up, because loy samanu kehem, and just whatever it is, my challenge for the day, it was going out and doing it, and that's how it feels today. But here I hear the results on the news every day.
Very good. I
But
wish you a
it's
happy
up
Hanukkah. I think
to
we have off
everybody.
next week.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank
My
you.
pleasure.
Happy
So
Hanukkah,
we'll see you, God
everybody.
willing, after Hanukkah. Thank
I'm
you.
glad we had you before Yontif.
Yes.
Yeah,
Very
thank you,
good.
Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Thank
And a
you.
good Sabbath to everybody.
Good Hanukkah to everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
You
you.
too.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
It's a Muhammad out there.
Oh, bless you.
Freilich of Hanukkah, everybody.
Freilich and Hanukkah. Thank you for joining.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very interesting.